First, I have to tell you about dating a witch. Her name was Alice, and no, I'm not being rude about her. She really was a witch. Like an enchantress, sorceress, magicianette. Spells and stuff. Dancing naked under the moon, or at least I'd like to imagine. If I'd known beforehand, I might have been more hesitant to get involved with her. I know people say stuff like, "My mother warned me about girls like you," but, well, my mother had warned me, as had any number of fairy tales for that matter. You don't date witches. But Alice was cute. We'd talk on a dating app and quickly arranged to meet in person. Sitting there in that coffee shop, I really wasn't thinking straight. I wish I could have said she enchanted me somehow, but if I was spellbound, it was only by her big brown eyes and the way she smiled at me as we sipped with 2 straws from a cream macchiato. Did I fall in love with her? I don't know. But I liked her. And I thought it had come as a shock when she casually mentioned the witch thing, slipping it in neatly between a discussion of our hobbies and what I did for work. I was already committed to seeing her again. What did it matter anyway? I wasn't small-minded. Witches were just people. Sort of. Sure, no one really knew where they'd come from, and they seemed to be a phenomena completely exclusive to our neck of the woods. At the very least, I've never heard of the real deal anywhere else. And whenever I bring the topic up to outsiders, they look at me like I'm crazy. So you have to understand, while it may seem strange to you, to us it was almost normal. Things were very good at first. She was so sweet, you wouldn't believe it. She told me she'd been lonely for a long time and that most people avoided her. Oh, everyone were polite, of course, but in every interaction there was this barrier preventing the development of real intimacy. Scared of her, I suppose. I prided myself on being better than that. No, really. And put a swagger in my step. And of course, my intentions were purely noble. After all, was I not graciously extending my kindness to her, rescuing her from a life of solitude? Had nothing to do with her shapely hips either. I was just being good. So, we were dating. Before long, we were going steady. It was always her who kept pushing us to take things further, but I didn't mind being pushed too much. She had a pleasant way of doing it. We even went on vacation together, renting a small cabin out by the lake some distance east of town. It was her way of telling me she loved me. A little underwhelming as a declaration? Well, remember how I said witches were only a local thing? Or at least so far as I knew about it? That's because they couldn't go anywhere else. Leaving was painful to them, and if they traveled too far, it killed them. As it was, the cabin was right on the edge of whatever invisible line marked the boundary of her existence. By the end of the 3rd day, she was running a fever, and by the start of the 4th, she was unwilling to leave her bed. Though she insisted on staying out the week, wanting me to get the full use of the new fishing rod she'd bought me, I drove us home that same night, scared of how pale and listless she had become. She perked up almost immediately as we turned our noses westward, and by the time I swung her into the driveway, I thought she was back to normal. I crashed at her place that night, and as we went to bed, I realized that no, normal was not the word. She was better. A whole lot of newfound energy to be worked off. I won't go into details, but, well, I'm sure you can imagine. I began to spend more time at her place after all. I still kept my own apartment for convenience sake, even though she was dropping hints about maybe finding something together. It made perfect sense to shack up, the economics of it, but I liked the freedom that came with separate dwellings. Tying yourself down too tightly too soon seemed like a waste of being young, especially when it was probably going to happen later in life anyway. It was a Saturday morning, as I recall, and I'd spent the night there as I usually did. I got up pretty early while she was still in bed, figuring I'd leave and have breakfast at a diner in town. Things had been a little tense the previous evening. Alice had been unusually quiet, sitting very silent beside me as we relaxed together on the couch. Later, when I'd reached for her in the bed, she turned away and complained of a headache. That time of the month, I suppose. I pulled my clothes on and quietly tiptoed down the stairs. In the hallway, I stopped. I stared. The door was gone. I blinked, but it did nothing to improve the situation. The door remained entirely absent. Only a smooth section of wall stood in its place. "Alice?" I called. Came her sleepy reply. "Babe, where's the door gone?" "The what?" The door, honey. I can't find the door." "Oh, that." She was coming out of the bedroom now, tying on a flannel robe. I took it away. She went into the kitchen, leaving me standing there nonplussed. After a while, I followed her like a lost puppy. "But, I said. I need the door." "Do you?" she said, pouring orange juice into a glass. "Yes, Alice. I gotta go." She exhaled mildly, but with obvious displeasure. Carefully, she occupied herself with the task of making breakfast so as not to have to look at me. I saw her shake her head slightly and smile a very tight smile while working. She was also clearly only preparing one portion. "Alice," I said, and reached out to grab her arm. "This isn't—" "Don't touch me like that," she snapped. My hand jerked away from her. I had no control over it whatsoever. It simply moved on its own accord. Wincing, I rubbed at it with my other hand, as it throbbed with a lingering sensation of pins and needles. The hell? She wasn't supposed to use her magic on me. Well, I mean, not like this anyhow. There were rules, weren't there? Alice seemed perfectly calm again, and was busying herself with setting the table. One plate, one glass, one set of knives and forks. "Why don't you sit down?" she said. "I'm not hungry," I muttered. My hand still stung. "That's all right," she said, and began buttering a piece of toast. "It's not for you." Not knowing what else to do, I started to feel a little frightened. I sat down and watched as she neatly and quietly had her breakfast. Neither of us spoke until, having finished her last forkful of scrambled eggs, she delicately wiped her mouth with a napkin. "Well," she finally said. "And what were you thinking of doing today?" "Nothing. I was just going to go home. Look, Alice. I don't know what this is, but stop it, okay? You can't keep me here." "I suppose you'll be leaving then?" I looked back over my shoulder, and the door was still gone. "Alice." "So," she continued, ignoring me, "you were going home. Straight home. You were not, for instance, stopping by Becky Greenfield's house on the way." She said this in a conversational tone, like she was asking me whether I thought it would rain. But her eyes were as hard as flint, and I felt a sudden sick lurch in my stomach. I don't," I said, and then had to clear my throat. "What do you mean?" Her expression darkened further as she got up from the table and began walking away. "What do I mean?" she said. "I don't know. Why don't you think really hard about it while you clean the dishes?" I tried to follow her out of the room. "Look," I was saying, "I can explain." But as I tried to pass through the doorway, I banged nose first into what felt like a brick wall. I rebounded, and it was all I could do to keep from falling on my ass. Through the door, I could see Alice seating herself on the couch. She glanced at me, mouthed the word clean, then turned on the TV. I thought it was strange how the picture moved as normal, but there was no sound. At first, I figured she had muted it for some reason, and then I realized whatever barrier had blocked my passage must also be blocking the noise from passing through. That put an end to my plan of loudly calling her several types of bitch, which was probably for the best. With no other option, I reluctantly began scrubbing the dishes clean. The situation was undeniably dire, But in a way, this enforced servitude was actually working to my advantage. I desperately needed some time to think and get my story straight. Okay, I see you raising your eyebrow here. Full disclosure, I had kinda maybe not been exactly as faithful to Alice as I ideally should have. There'd been 1 or 2 minor indiscretions along the way, one of which was called Becky Greenfield. I hasten to add that she meant nothing to me. It was a drunken fling, over and done with the 3rd time it happened. I certainly had no intention of ever seeing her again. Now, this was true, but maybe still a little more information than what Alice strictly needed to know. I had no idea of how exactly she'd found out as much as she already had, and how much that really was. We'd had a few talks about magic, and I knew there was no such thing as enchanted mirrors or scrying pools. Magic was a force of the mind, she explained. It lived in people's heads. I'd been a little disappointed at the time. What? I'd said. Like it's not even real? People just think it is? Sure, she'd said. Just make-believe. And then she snapped her fingers, and suddenly there'd been the sensation of feathers tickling me in all my worst spots. As I collapsed in a heap of giggles, she smiled and added, "But when it feels real, what's the difference?" She'd maintained the spell for another heartbeat before snapping her fingers again, and letting me breathlessly get back on my feet. At first I was angry with her, but she had laughingly drawn me towards the bed. "Don't be mad," she whispered as she pulled me down on top of her. "I bet I can make you feel really good, too." I certainly had no doubts left that magic was more than a mere illusion. It was our minds that defined our reality. And as long as I thought I couldn't leave the kitchen, my body would act accordingly. And if I thought the door was gone, I would be unable to make any use of it, even if I actually stood there touching the handle. Are you now about to call me a prize-winning fool? Are you about to point out that if all of this was the case, then, yeah, of course she'd known what I was up to? That, hey, buddy, get a clue. Because obviously she was reading your mind. Bzzz. Wrong. She can't do that. It's the one thing everyone knows about witches. Look, think for a second, huh? With all the dirty little secrets floating around the small town, can you imagine what would happen if people thought their minds were being spied on? There'd be pitchforks and torches in hand out on Main Street. The ensuing mob would have made what happened to those poor girls at Salem look like a day in the park. So, no, mind reading was out. But somehow she had learned something, and I now was stuck in it. It didn't take me long to finish washing up, but I thought perhaps I might have just managed to sketch out a rudimentary defense. As I dried and put away the final piece of cutlery, I felt the lessening of some pressure behind me. The noise of the TV became suddenly audible. Here went nothing. I slowly walked into the living room, trying to put on my most disarming smile. "Alice," I said. "Look, you know I'm crazy about you. It's you and me, right?" I sat down next to her and tried to put my arm around her. She shrugged me off. "Come on," I wheedled. "Becky, no way. I talked to her a couple of times, that's all. Sure, she came up to me at Flanagan's when she'd had a couple of drinks. She tried to kiss me and I pushed her away. I told her it wasn't happening. End of story. Look at me." She did turn towards me then. Her eyes were wet. And I felt guilty. But I also thought, "Jackie, my boy, now you've got her." "You swear?" she asked. "There's nothing else?" "Yeah," I said. "Course not. You're my itchy-witchy girl." "What do I need with anyone else?" She reached out to caress my face. I prepared myself for sweet forgiveness that was to come. "You stupid motherfucker," she said affectionately. "You're still lying to me." A sound like a gong reverberated in my mind as my head exploded with pain. It was like someone had cracked my dome with a frying pan, and I slid off the couch, moaning and scrambling backwards on the floor to get away from her. She'd lost it. For the first time, I started to think that she might actually seriously hurt me. "Stop it!" I shouted. "You're crazy! You don't even know!" "I saw you!" she shrieked back. She was standing now, face twisted with fury. Around her, the room was growing dim, as if she was somehow drinking the light. "She got in your truck!" "So what?" I shouted. "I can't give her a ride?" "I went to her house." She spat each word like a bullet. "She told me." I threatened to turn her into a toad if she didn't. As if I could. As if there'd be any point. There's nothing worse I could do than leave her as she is, yet you fucked her anyway. An old slut. Becky was only 35, I thought. But Alice was working herself up to something. A haze of darkness had began covering her skin. And it was pulsating in time with her words. She came forwards, driving me backwards to where the door was not. "I should kill you," she raged. "I should burn you. I should make you eat your..." She might do it. She really might do it. Desperate now, still on the floor, I groped blindingly behind me with one hand. It seized upon something. With all the strength that was in me, I hurled the object like a tomahawk. A green ankle boot struck her in the forehead with a loud thud. "Ow!" she said. She sat down on the couch and the shadows dissipated. Her and the room both went back to normal. For a moment we looked at each other in silence. Then she burst into tears. "I loved you," she sobbed. "I loved you." I tried to say something, but she cut me off. "Go," she cried. "Just go." Behind me, the door was once more where it used to be. It was a sorry scene, all right. But I figured I'd better do as she said before she changed her mind. Slipping my jacket on, I was halfway out the door when she called out to me. "Jack?" I turned around. She said something else. I couldn't make out the words, but they struck me like a spray of ice water, seemed to seep into my skin and into my head, nestling somewhere deep in the back of my brain. And I ran. I left town the same day, setting myself up in a hotel the next town over. The one good thing was, at least I knew she couldn't come after me. Everything sort of worked out after that. I'd been commuting to work anyway, so relocating actually put me closer to my job. And I was able to call someone to get the rest of my stuff from my apartment. And then I got a new place here in this town. So, yeah, that's how I ended up here. Don't date witches, I guess. What's that? You think maybe there's some other lesson here? Like, maybe don't cheat on your girlfriend? Yeah, I know. Trust me, I know. You think I've been telling you this because I like going over it? It were those last few words she spoke to me. They were a spell. Every time I think about asking someone out now, I have to tell them the story first. I can't help it. So, now that you know, what do you say? Pick you up at 8?